at what cost will we continue to stay in a relationship, to jump through the hoops? At what cost? To ourselves, to our health, to our mental health, to our other relationships. And I feel like this is really what it comes down to when we are dealing with somebody who has these narcissistic personality traits. How much are we willing to hurt and suffer and sacrifice to maintain the relationship? Hi friends, welcome back. Today we are talking about that narcissist in your life again. This is a subject that is just really resonating with the audience and myself personally, because as I've shared, I have had a lot of experience in my life of dealing with this personality type. And so today's episode is really about the worst things that narcissists do to their loved ones. And there's a purpose for this, right? This isn't just us complaining or saying, can you believe this happened to me? But it really is giving us a space to share our experience, and you're welcome to share yours in the comments, in order to validate our feelings, because that's something when we're dealing with somebody who has these narcissistic traits, our feelings and our experience are never validated, right? And that's part of why we get kind of fixated on this topic, is because it's so hurtful and it's so frustrating to not have our feelings validated, right? Our feelings and our experience matter. And so that's one of the reasons we're going to talk about these really awful things that narcissists will do on a regular basis to those in their lives, is to validate how it makes us feel and to really kind of normalize the experience by way of sharing that this happens to a lot of people, right? Because sometimes when we are in these relationships, it can feel like we're in a bit of a silo and it's only happening to us. And oftentimes, I know for me, before I even understood the terminology or knew that there was something called a personality disorder, I just thought everything in the relationship was my fault, right? And especially when we're young and when these dynamics happen in our family of origin, oftentimes, as a child, the belief, we come out of that thinking like there's something wrong with me, right? And so normalizing that, hey, this behavior is out there, this happens, these experiences happen to people, and, there's a terminology for it, and, you can start to learn and educate yourself and really separate yourself from this, ongoing issue that the other person has, as a way of maybe building back some of your self-esteem and realizing that potentially distancing yourself from the person and the situation could be the most healthy route for you to go. So let's dive into this. And like I said, I'm not going to name names or get personal about different experiences that I've had with people in my life, but just in a broad sense, talking about how when you are regularly interacting with someone with the narcissistic personality disorder, you are regularly going to feel self-doubt. And so it's like, what are they doing? They're instilling this self-doubt in you. I mentioned that narcissists will not validate your feelings or your experience because it's all about them. Oftentimes, your feelings and your experience will be denied or ignored. And so as a result, when this happens over and over, and if this is happening in your formative years, or if this is happening with someone who's really important to you, it chips away at your self-confidence, and you might find over time, just as a pattern, you doubt yourself. And so this is something that's definitely worth bringing up in therapy, something that's worth noticing, like, wow, if somebody has treated you this way for so long, you start to have this internal, like, gosh, self-doubt. And you might even anticipate that other people in the world are going to react to you negatively the way the narcissist has, almost like as a reflex, right? And we can kind of notice these patterns in ourselves of just doubting ourselves. And so this is something that's very likely happened as a result of your exposure to the narcissistic personality. Okay, another thing that narcissists will do very often is wield power and threats. And so this is something that can be very familiar for anyone who has dealt with this personality type, where everything is a power struggle. And so when you are constantly feeling that you don't have any power, and maybe you're even trying to make a decision that's really healthy for you in your life, and the other person makes a big threat, threatens to cut you off, threatens to never speak to you again, threatens to, not welcome you at family events, depending on the relationship, maybe threatens to not pay for things anymore. There's all kinds of ways that this can take place. But the issue, and the familiar recurring issue, is this power struggle and the feeling or the experience of this person kind of is going to pull the rug out if you don't get in line and continue to follow them blindly, right? And so, just wanting to validate and normalize that experience of how frustrating and upsetting that can be when you're on the receiving end and you're just feeling like, gosh, they're not giving me any options here. They're threatening, they're making these big threats, which can be really, really scary, and depending on the relationship and who they are to you, it can be incredibly scary to feel that you're going to be cut off from a family, or that you're going to be, cut off financially, or whatever the dynamic is. It's so normal to have these frustrations and also to feel stuck, right? Sometimes it can be like you're being forced to make an impossible decision, even though you didn't ask to make a decision at all, right? The narcissist in the relationship is pulling the rug out because they need that power, right? They need to be the one to control the situation, to control the relationship. And so this is something that happens all the time, right? If you are in a relationship or have a connection with somebody in your family who has these traits, it's not a discussion. It is not, it's not a give and take. It's the rug's going to be pulled out, and they're going to continue to hold all the cards and hold all the power. And if they feel that they can't, because you want to have that autonomy, you want to be able to make a decision that makes sense for you in your life, then oftentimes you will have to face the consequences of their threats, right? And sometimes the threats they'll follow through with, and sometimes they're empty threats. But oftentimes that, the narcissist wants to hold the power, and that's how they manage their relationships. And so there's no room for you to, have a give and take, or for you to do something that doesn't perfectly fall in line with how they need things to go. Okay, this one is maybe the most frustrating, but the narcissist in your life will rewrite history. This is so common. You have an experience with this person, an argument or something happens, and then a week later, a month later, a year later, they will deny it ever happened, or they will change what happened. They'll change the narrative. They'll change the story. They'll remember it different than you. This one, they call this crazy making because we know how we've experienced things. And oftentimes these are events that are very memorable, right? Or a conversation that's very memorable. Maybe they said something that really, was nasty. And as time goes on, they will not only not take accountability for what happened or what they said or how it played out, but they will change the entire story. And so I'm laughing because this is like triggering for me. And I'm sure many of you listening or watching have had this experience. If there's a narcissist in your life, they will change the story. And the most frustrating part is when they are sharing a different version of the story to other people in your life. And these other people maybe are starting to believe them. And there's this narrative that's now being written about you that you just have this feeling of like, I have no control over this. That's not true. That doesn't line up with my experience. I feel like I'm going crazy, right? This is almost like a version of gaslighting where they might even tell you that you are crazy or you are wrong or of course you remember this. Of course it happened like this, right? And if you don't have another, sane person who was there with you to back up your story and your memory of the experience, it can be really rattling and it can be very disorienting when somebody just has a completely different recollection of how things happened. So if you're nodding your head and your blood is starting to boil here because you've experienced this, again, this is a very normal situation when you're dealing with somebody who has the traits of narcissistic personality disorder. They will rewrite history. They will change the narrative. And good luck trying to convince them that this is how things happen. So this tendency to rewrite history and to really change the narrative in their favor is such a common trait with narcissistic personality disorder that it's not worth your time to try to argue with them, right? Because they're gonna stick to their guns. They're gonna just go all in on the new version of the story that benefits them more. They're going to recruit people to take their side. And hopefully there was somebody there with you who can validate your story. But if not, if there was no one there to validate you, hopefully this is validating to you, right? Just knowing that this is something that, people who have narcissistic personality disorder, they will repeatedly change history to benefit their narrative. And you're not crazy. You really do remember it correctly. They have just changed things. So we started out by talking about this, but it's worth talking about it again and mentioning it, that they will deny your experience. They will deny or ignore your feelings. And this is something that, it can be subtle, it can be blatant, and it's chronic and pervasive when you are dealing with a narcissist. Your feelings and your experience really do not register, really do not matter. And so this is where I really want to implore you to have healthy relationships. Maybe you have a parent who has these narcissistic traits and you can't do anything to change it, right? That's your parent. You can't change it. But hopefully you can choose a partner in life who's supportive and who doesn't have these tendencies. So you can have someone who's able to hold space for you and validate your emotional experience and your feelings, right? And who's connected to you on an emotional level where it's not just all about power and control and protecting themselves. Okay, if you have a narcissist in your life, you can bet that they will try to steal your moment. So whatever that moment might be, whether it be your wedding day or some significant day in your life, you can bet that the narcissist in your family is going to flare up, and somehow the day is going to become more about them, or at least partially about them, even though it is not their moment, right? And this can be another one of those experiences that are so hurtful. It's your wedding day or your graduation day, and it's something that you've been planning and you're excited and it's an accomplishment or something significant for you, and you just want your family to show up and support you and be there to acknowledge you, right? When there's that narcissist, they're not capable of it. So they're either going to say they're going to come and they're not going to show up, or they're going to show up and they're going to cause a stink about something. So you can just bet that your moment is never going to fully be your moment, because there's just this inability to let someone else shine and to let someone else take on an accomplishment, and to have for them to stand by and support and to really feel happy for you, right? If it's not about them, then they're not happy. And so they're going to make it about them. And typically that is in a negative way. But that's just very normal. And so if this is something you've experienced, it can be, this can kind of feed back into that, having that self-doubt, or maybe you feeling like I'm not that big of a deal, or I don't celebrate myself, right? If the experience that you've had is that you were never given your moment, right? It wasn't okay for that person in your life to step back and to give you that moment. This might be something you notice now in yourself, a pattern of not being able to recognize your strengths, your accomplishments, to give yourself that pause and that celebration of yourself. Another thing that the narcissist will do to their loved ones is punish them, right? And this goes back to that power struggle. If everyone is not just staying in line, reading their mind, doing exactly what they want you to do, they're going to punish you, right? And they're often going to make it as painful as possible, whether it be cutting you off, cutting you out, painting a narrative about you to others in the family. There's punishments. And this is something that makes dealing with a narcissist so frustrating and so hurtful for those of us who are able to feel empathy and who are able to experience this range of emotion. It can be so hurtful, and it can, you might find yourself being more timid in life, or looking to others to help you make a decision, right? If you were just used to, going along with what this person wanted, or almost taking orders, you might find as you get along in life, like, wow, I might be missing some competency in just making my own decisions, or feeling like it's okay for me to make some decisions for myself. All right, now this might be the most common experience for those of us who are dealing with a narcissist, but they try to make you feel guilty. And I say try to make you feel guilty because hopefully as we build our self-esteem and as we make some healthy boundaries, and we can, have some other healthier relationships to build ourselves back up, hopefully we can see through this guilt and really see the difference between what I would call righteous guilt, which is like you did something wrong, you feel guilty, and that is appropriate. Unrighteous guilt being someone is manipulating me into feeling like this is my fault, but it really wasn't, right? And so the narcissist is the master at attempting to make everyone around them feel guilty as a tactic for getting their compliance. Because again, this goes back to power and compliance, right? If you're not just going along with what they want, being compliant, dancing the dance, right? Doing what is expected, And we see this so much in families where it's like we all know the rules. And if you don't follow the rules, even if this means denying yourself healthy choices in your life, or, not having the growth that you were meant to have, or having the adventures and the experience and everything that you know is right for you, you are, made to feel guilty and punished for really what is your right to live your life to the fullest in a way that feels authentic to you. And so, hopefully this little episode here will give you just a little bit of satisfaction of, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one who has had this experience. Maybe I can put down some of the guilt. Maybe this is not righteous guilt. I didn't do anything wrong. And so really even building that skill of being able to really analyze your own decisions and actions, like, was that okay for me to do, to make that healthy decision for me? It really upset the narcissist and they're having a fit over here and not inviting me to this and that. But should I feel guilty about that? Or is that just their stuff really getting in the way of us having a healthy relationship? And really that's what it all comes back to, is at what cost will we continue to stay in a relationship, to jump through the hoops? At what cost? To ourselves, to our health, to our mental health, to our other relationships. And I feel like this is really what it comes down to when we are dealing with somebody who has these narcissistic personality traits. How much are we willing to hurt and suffer and sacrifice to maintain the relationship? And so, like we've talked about before, trying to put up boundaries to where there can be some kind of relationship where there's not so much damage, whether that's just damage to your own heart, damage to your other relationships, damage to your ability to feel confident and like you can, figure out who you are in life, right? Each of us has to come to this decision on our own of how much damage am I okay with? And for some of us, maybe it's no more. That's enough. I don't want to allow any more damage. Or maybe depending on where the person is with their own ability to see their actions and to see their patterns with people, maybe they would go along with some boundaries or even, see some help. Right? Go to a therapist, start to work on some of their patterns and their need for control and their inability to really show up in relationship with you in a non-judgmental, accepting manner where two humans can just appreciate one another and relate on a healthy level. So hopefully this has been something that has helped you feel validated, feel seen. I would love to hear if there are experiences that you've had that you've weathered the storm alone and you don't feel like anyone understands or knows what you've gone through. Feel free to share in the comments. Also, please subscribe if you like the content, and I will be back next week with another message.